does that legislation actually say? Okay, hang on here. We're going on. Here we go. Removes the harsh penalties for cannabis possession and use, protects the citizens against unjust seizure of their property, which is rampant across our state as well as the country. A lot of people don't realize that people who use cannabis, whether recreationally or for medical purposes, you stand the risk of losing your property to asset forfeiture. Allows for personal cultivation in an area no greater than 10 foot by 10 foot. Establishes controlled commercial cultivation, distribution, and sale by licensed cannabis establishments. Legalizes cannabis for medical use. Patients must have approval from a licensed physician to be considered a patient. Now, we can cover some of those issues a little later. Patients under the age of 21 have to have the consent of a guardian. Physicians are protected from the loss of licenses for recommending cannabis. Grants the same rights to out-of-state patients that we will have here. Protects cannabis users from any restrictions on medical care, including organ transplant. And that has come up in other states. Gives the Department of Health and Senior Services a deadline of February 1st, 2013 to set up a license and fee system for retail cannabis establishments, and bars the department from requiring customers to provide any information besides a photo ID for age verification. The things that it doesn't do is it doesn't say that you can drive while impaired. And it doesn't say that it allows first sale to minors, and these are issues that will come up. And it doesn't sanction. It also doesn't sanction impairment on the job. Frees all persons who are incarcerated or under supervision for those accused or convicted of nonviolent cannabis-only infractions.
Yippee!
And a misspelled word. Sets up a means to clear the records as well. So if you have been convicted and that still exists and you served time, whatever happened to in your particular case, if it was a cannabis-only crime, that will be removed from your record. It allows for an excise tax for increased tax benefit on retail sales, retail only. Prohibits Missouri law enforcement from spending funds to aid and assist the enforcement of federal laws that conflict with cannabis regulation. Establishes a Class A misdemeanor for anyone who might try to impede the lawful exercise of these provisions. And by the way, that is the only law that is in regard to cannabis. This removes all felonies and such. Protects cannabis farms and retail establishments from unreasonable zoning requirements. Protects Missourians from arrest or prosecution for possession. Directly challenges the federal law that conflicts constitutionally with this measure. How many signatures? Well, we can go, before we go on any further, does anybody have any questions? Yes?
You said, and speak up for the microphone, please. Yes, hello, my name's Andre. You said something about jobs. Would it like with drug tests for jobs, can you get fired from your job? You said you couldn't be at work under the influence, but would you still have to get drug tested? And if you have weed in your system, could you still get a job?
That's a pretty important one right there. Well, understand. Okay, first off, is that okay? The question was in regard to drug testing on the job, and if this bill affects drug testing on the job. Simply no. No, it doesn't. It is our goal through this legislation to bring more reason to those areas. But understand that if you were to test positive for a lot of substances, they have the ability to fire you. You know,
right.
The question comes down
like going to get a job.
Yes.
People that would test positive for marijuana and they're going to apply for a job. If they're going to apply for a job and you test positive for marijuana and it's legal,
yes, then
can you still get that job?
No,
that's up to the employer.
Up to the employer.
What's that? Yes, it's
it
basically it really is up to your employer. Your employer can control whether or not you hire in a job if you test positive for oxycodone, even if you take it medically.
Take a prescription for it.
You know, so, these are the kinds of things that we're gonna be up against anyway. And if you have, our hope is that you have a reputable employee, that he will judge you not on a drug test, but rather on impairment.
Right.
And we bring up the issue of impairment in this, both for driving as well as for situations like you're talking about. And that's really where it should be, a cop stops somebody on the road. It should be because they're impaired. It shouldn't be because they don't like the way they look and think it might be a good chance that they can do a urine test on you and find cannabis so they can bust you. Those are the kinds of things we want to do away with. We want it to be truthful, So I wish I had a better answer for you on that one.
I got a question about
Sure.
the agricultural and the hemp. Is that going to allow a farmer to only grow a 10 by 10 plot as well, or is that going to open it up?
No. Okay. This is the basic difference here. And I've said this before. A lot of people can't get past the legality issues dealing with cannabis. And this changes the whole framework. Once you remove cannabis from drug scheduling, it's no longer considered a controlled substance. It's no longer linked to controlled substances like heroin and cocaine and things of that nature. The penalties are different. But what you have is, inside anyone can grow within an area of 10 by 10. Anybody can. Now, if you are a medical patient and you require more than what you can get with that, case in point would be guys like Rob here, who he could really benefit from cannabis oil. The cannabis oil takes a lot more cannabis to produce. So he may need an area larger than 10 by 10 to grow the amount of cannabis he needs to treat his illness. With a doctor's recommendation, he can get that. Now, for an individual who's not a medical patient, growing an area larger than 10 by 10 means he's a commercial grower, which means he has to have the licenses or the permits regarding that. That's the difference. Yes?
Sorry. You can only buy it if you have a prescription?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. Anyone will be able to buy it if they're over the age of 21.
Not grow it, but just buy it.
Anyone can grow it in an area 10 by, up to 10 by 10 feet by 10 feet. Now, and then you can buy it. You can buy from a retail store if you so choose. If you're over the age of 21.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we try to make this as simple as possible. Try to cut out all the baloney that we see in so many other different kinds of legislation, and try to write this in a way in which most people can understand. And sometimes the simplicity kind of makes it a bit more confusing. But the important thing here is to basically turn back the clock back to prior to 1937. Prior to 1937, anyone could buy cannabis. And it wasn't until 1937, and a lot of the corrupt ways in which they went about making it illegal, one of the ways was to start calling it marijuana. And no one knew what marijuana was. Back in the day, everyone knew what cannabis was. Most physicians prescribed it. And a lot of people used it throughout the country. And it was no big deal, it was no problem. People weren't all caught up in euphoria and all these other things. They weren't concerned about their children running out and getting high. They would spend more time with their kids, teaching them about the rights and wrongs. You don't let your kids take and if they're small, you don't let them get into a bottle of aspirin. You know that, over 4,000 people die every year from NSAIDs, like aspirin and Tylenol, So, parents should be parents, and cannabis should be treated the way cannabis is. It's non-toxic, and we need to treat it as such. Yes? Now's the time to ask the questions. This is really what it amounts to for us. We have 6 out of 9 districts that we have to fulfill. And roughly, on an average, around 26,000 signatures per district. Are we ready to go into this? Or we want to discuss some more about the bill?
Let me go ahead and just say a few things about what
Sure.
Sean is asking me to talk about.
Sure.
There's an individual in town, he's from St. Louis, his name is Sean Randall. He's a law student, and he lived in Columbia for a good long time. In Columbia, you might not be aware, but they do have a medical marijuana law already and have had it since the last 10 years or so. So he has taken it upon himself to go to the
face it yet, but I'm just gonna kind of sum up what he's told me and written me. I talked to him in St. Louis, and he emailed me the material that he had. What he said was that the attorney for the city is more or less sympathetic, understanding, cooperative, and may well be so cooperative that he lets us get out of his office and into an initiative petition. Initiative petition in Missouri, or in Kansas City, is 5% of the last mayoral vote, which is 3,500 signatures. So 3,500 signatures plus, to make sure we get enough, we can get this on the ballot for 2012. They've had it in Missouri, in Columbia, let's see, can't find the date on it, 8 to 10 years. The medical marijuana initiative petition for Kansas City, Missouri would be somewhat as follows. I'm just going to summarize. Whereas more than 60 international health organizations have recognized the importance of and use of marijuana and cannabis for medical reasons, the American Academy of Family Physicians, American Nurses Association, and so forth. Whereas there have been more than 2,000 studies, published studies, that indicate the efficacy of it. Whereas here we go, 1996, the District of Columbia adopted an initiative petition. 2004, Columbia passed an initiative petition for medical marijuana by 69% of the voters. Marinol is a synthetic form of cannabis, and it has been proven to be less effective and more psychoactive, and is not as beneficial as marijuana. And finally, whereas he has added a number of additional diseases that were not in the original list of the diseases that were included for the Columbia experiment, which is still going on. What you have to do in Columbia, basically, is go to your doctor and get a medical permission to possess the marijuana. And there's no provision in the law in Missouri for setting up clinics, buying it, etc. You have to come up with it on your own. The way it works is if you get stopped in the car, or you get police come by your house or whatever, and you have a doctor's permission to have it in your possession, then you legally can use it, possess it, they can arrest you, and so forth. So it doesn't do a whole lot of, doesn't protect you in a whole lot of other ways, but it does allow you to actually possess it, use it, and not get arrested when you have it. Questions about that?
I think you need to make some clarification that you're talking about a city ordinance where what I was referring to is a state constitutional amendment.
Yeah, this would be a city ordinance, and it would only require 3,500 signatures, which is pretty simple to get, I think. And it has not been approved by the attorney for the city yet, but he anticipates that he's going to be talking to him at the end of the week.
But these are just to get them voted on, right? This is just
These are to get a petition, to have a petition out to get them voted on.
Who do we gotta call the pressure about that?
about getting it voted on, like.
Who do we gotta call and put the pressure on to get the vote out?
It's just a
The
matter.
city attorney?
once,
All right, so we get that many petitions, isn't that like getting that many people to vote on it already?
The attorney okays the petition. The attorney gives it back to Sean. We take the petition and take it out and get 3,500 plus signatures. It then goes on the ballot for 2012 in the presidential election, and if it passes by more than 50%, it becomes the law of the land in Kansas City, Missouri. So it has a pretty good chance of being something that can be done. The legalizing process, which is extensive and covers a lot of area, is going to require a whole lot of names and a whole lot of signatures between now and I believe about the 1st of May. This needs to be done by the end of May. So we're in real trouble in terms of the Missouri Initiative petition, unless we really get cranking. So we're going to need a lot of help. Yeah, question?
You said it becomes law of the land in Kansas City, Missouri. So is this just for Kansas City or is this for the state?
No, this is just for Kansas City, Missouri.
All right.
The city limits of Kansas City, Missouri.
So, I mean, because we have people citing from other counties.
No.
No, you would have only people signing from Kansas City, the city of Kansas City,
So
Missouri.
their address they have to have a Kansas City, Missouri address.
Correct, yeah, they'll check the address just like they check the.
But that's only 3,500 people.
That's right.
The other
Basically-
one's how many? The statewide one is how many?
State one, we're looking at roughly about 130 to 150,000 signatures across the whole state. We currently have people working all over the state and gathering signatures. What we've been hoping to achieve here is that to run several different elections at the same time. We're hedging our bets. And that's why we're looking at medical programs in Kansas City, also in Springfield, St. Louis City.
How long have you guys been collecting signatures?
We just began, we just started. The St. Louis City has been collecting signatures for their city ordinance for a while. Now, what we're trying to do on a statewide basis hasn't been done before, anywhere in the country. There is no legislation like our legislation anywhere else in the country. It's what everybody else wants, but no one else has gone for it. This is our shot. This is our time. Right or wrong, however steep it is to achieve, this is our shot. If we really want to see this happen, we can do it. We have to knuckle down. We have to make it happen. That's why I'm traveling around the state talking to people, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. But like what he's saying though is that we cannot neglect the city ordinance, because the city ordinance can be a step. You know, the statewide initiative that we're trying to do is a leap. Because what we want, that's saying we want everything. We want everything that we were supposed to have. The medical one is incomplete, because basically what it amounts to is that a medical bill for the city of Kansas City, just like it is for Columbia, may provide protection for you as a medical patient, and may provide protection for small quantities of cannabis on your person, but does not allow you for cultivation or the ability to provide for that, or non-medical, or hemp, or any of the other factors that we're looking for.
In Cali or Colorado or none of the places where marijuana is legal, nobody else has tried to do it like that at all?
Well, in the states that currently have medical programs, currently, in all of those states, except for Oregon, it is still considered a Schedule I drug. This is part of the problem with this whole scenario is a Schedule I drug means it has no medical value whatsoever. That's the Fed's stand on this. Even though they patented cannabinoids in 2003, stating, and in that patent, and I have a copy of it over on the table someplace here, you can look at it. It's a legal document, and in that document it states that cannabis is effective in treating a number of very serious illnesses like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and stroke. It's written right in the patent. The federal government still considers it a Schedule I drug. Why are there still busts going on in California and Colorado and all these other states? There's the reason, because it's still considered a Schedule I drug by the federal government. So, and also by their state government too as well. The state of California and the state of Colorado There's still, cannabis is still considered a Schedule I drug with no medical value, yet they have a medical program. So you end up with a paradox. You end up with a situation where the police can pick and choose. What we're pushing for is a constitutional amendment which will legalize cannabis and regulate it, which regulation is something we all live with. It's part of being in a society. So regulation is okay. It's okay to say that people have to be 21 years or older before they can purchase cannabis. That's fine. Now, if someone's under the age of 21 and they need it medically, that's fine under the supervision of a parent or guardian. See the difference. The difference is that in a state like California or Colorado, if you go beyond if you break their law and you go beyond what their law states, you will be prosecuted as if you were dealing with a Schedule I drug. Our goal, like I said, is to remove it from that, and we put it the same as alcohol, basically. I don't like to compare cannabis to alcohol, but basically the kind of regulation we're talking about is similar to that. I don't like to call it the same as alcohol because alcohol is toxic. Cannabis is not.
One of the reasons is that we're doing a constitutional amendment instead of a legislative initiative is because a legislative initiative can be changed in many ways by the state legislature. They can just pretty much negate what we've done after all the work. But with the constitutional amendment, that locks it in more.
Exactly. The legislators can go behind that. Whether they can go, if we were going for a statutory amendment, they could literally go right behind us and alter everything we're saying. And you know, it's no small thing when you go changing, you know, our amendments to our Constitution. That's a big deal, and it should be a big deal. And we're doing it very soberly. I mean, we're not taking it lightly. So, any other questions? You understand the difference between what we're talking about when we talk about a city ordinance or an initiative and a statewide? Understand that we have tried for years. We have tried to get medical legislation passed in the state, going through our house, our state house, and they have fought us. We've had a lot of our legislators have told us that, oh, sure, we can see that there's a good use for cannabis for our state. We understand that. We see all that. We understand that hemp could mean billions of dollars for our state, could re-energize our farmers. We understand that we have people who are sick and dying in our state. I used to pack groups of them down to Jeff City. Greg's been with us down there a number of times too, down to Jeff City to try to get our legislators to come around. And we presented House bill after House bill, and the Speaker of the House did not allow them to even see the House floor. So we finally came to this point, and we said, hey, finally, we had some money was being made available to us to move forward. We said, let's go for what we really think the state needs, what we think the Midwest needs.